Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, I'm Audley Stevenson, and it's a pleasure as always to be here on another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. And of course, this is hands down the most audacious podcast that you'll find on the internet. And I really want to send my appreciation and thanks to our listeners and our viewers for joining us here and spending some time out of your day as we continue our ongoing goal of helping you live your best audacious life ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. We're on Twitter and Instagram under the handle The Audacious Pod. And then if you head over to Facebook and search The Audacious Living Podcast, you'll find us there as well. If you're watching on YouTube, then you easily can subscribe to our YouTube channel by tapping the notification bell down below. And there you go, you're connected. So, I'd encourage you to like, follow, subscribe, share, tell a friend, and let's keep this audacious conversation going and going and going. And let's just rock and roll with it, man. It'll be good. I'm super pleased to have Phil Van Hooser joining me on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. Phil is an all-around great guy, and he and I first connected just over 10 years ago when he was a guest on another podcast that I had, and so it's fantastic that we're able to reconnect and essentially do it all over again. So it was a nice reuniting with him. And look, Phil is a guy that's been in the leadership development space for over 30 years, and he clearly has a heart and passion for his work. He's an expert on communications and leadership, as well as being a Hall of Fame keynote speaker. So it definitely is a big deal. He's got a book out, his latest book. It's called Earning the Right to Be Heard, and it's the perfect strategic communication tool that can help each of us be more audacious in our communication with others, and particularly when we're dealing with decision makers or individuals whose attention that we're trying to get. It all starts with building a connection. And you're going to hear Phil talk and discuss about the importance of how much influence and how much it can affect our influence and ability to effectively communicate. So connection is key, and it's something that we all should focus on. I can go on and on and on, but this is where I'm going to stop talking and give you an opportunity to hear from Phil Van Hooser himself. I promise you, this is an absolutely wonderful chat. Enjoy. So first off, thank you for spending some time here with me on the Audacious Living Podcast. It's great to reconnect with you again.
It's been great to be here. And as I said, seeing that smiling face makes it all worthwhile. Thank you, man.
Well, it's awesome. It's great to have you here. And, your work, you've been in this field, this area of leadership, 30 years. I mean, Phil, this is a long time. My goodness.
It's amazing. It's actually coming up on next year, I guess, will be 34 years of doing it full time.
Yeah.
I've been passionate about leadership and leadership development for my entire life, specifically my professional life. But these last 33 years have gone by so quickly, but they've also been so rewarding. The things that I've been able to share, of course, I feel blessed by, but it's amazing what I've been able to learn from some really, really fantastic leaders that I've been able to come in contact with. And so now having the opportunity to have this kind of conversation just is sort of icing on the cake.
Awesome. It is. Out of curiosity, and what's changed? I know that's a really big question when you think back to the length of time you're doing this work in the field of leadership development. What sort of things have you seen evolve and change over time when it comes to how leaders manage the people they work and develop their own leaders and develop their own people into leaders?
Well, it's a great question. And I think I'm sort of uniquely qualified to be able to answer it because, and no joking intended, I come from a different generation. When I came into the work world in the late 70s, early 80s,
yep.
there was a very autocratic leadership philosophy. It was sort of the same. It was at home, parents were autocratic. Children didn't have a lot of say, and it was same in school or in sports or whatever. And so it carried over into the workplace, no question about it. But soon after, this is my experience, soon after I entered the workplace, let's say in the first 5 years after I was actually working, I started to see a seismic shift in terms of employee-employer relationships.
Yes.
I specifically worked at the time for a very progressive manufacturing company that was embracing the concept of employee involvement, employee participative management. And I wish I could say I was smart enough to see it on the horizon. I wish I could say I orchestrated or manufactured all this, but it's not true. What happened was they started sending me off to all these training programs to learn and to sort of at least embrace the different leadership styles. I thought it was because I was brilliant. The reality of it is that was not the case.
Right.
I just had not developed these bad habits yet. And so I was able to come into this leadership discussion at a time when there was change afoot. I sort of embraced it, and then I just sort of followed it and built on it with my own work. And so to answer your question, what was autocratic 40 years ago is far more democratic, far more participative now. Yes. So that's one big shift. And you could talk about that for 45 minutes alone.
Totally, yeah.
But then you've got the big shift of the changing attitude of employees. And there's been so much that has been written. I mean, when I went into the workplace, oddly, I was literally given this advice. Get in there, do your job, stay for 30 years. The business will take care of you. You'll retire with a wonderful pension or a wonderful retirement plan or whatever. There is no one that's being told that. And if they are being told that, you got to be really careful. You better be watching carefully what else these people are telling you, because it's just not as secure anymore. And so now we've got employees coming to the workplace that are, in my opinion, better informed. I'm not saying better educated. I'm not going to argue that point. But when you have a computer, a huge computer in the palm of your hand, and you can check out anything in a moment's notice, that's information available in a way that it was never available before.
Correct.
So number one, they're more informed. Number two, they're more mobile. They're going to go where the opportunity leads them or where their interests lie, et cetera. Again, in my early generation, there were people that went to work and stayed for 30, 40 years.
That's right.
I literally, oddly, a few years ago, spoke at a banking conference out west, and they introduced a lady at lunch who was celebrating and about to retire, but celebrating her 62nd year of working for this particular bank. That's 62.
Wow.
And I'll never forget, I went up to her afterwards. I couldn't help it.
Unheard of.
I went up to her afterwards, and she was this bright little lady, and she's very positive and all the rest. And I shook her hands and I said, look, congratulations, but I got a question. Why now? After 62 years, why now?
Yeah.
She looked at me. I swear this is the truth. She looked at me and she goes, my husband's getting older. And I thought to myself, so are you, lady. 62 years plus 20 or whatever number that you were when you started. But see, she didn't see that in herself.
No.
She was still young. So you see a changing shift from staying with the same company, mobility. And then the third thing, and I'll hush, I promise. The third thing is that people are just better protected today than they've ever been before. And when I'm talking about protection, I'm talking about legal protection. I'm talking about protected in the workplace. I think that's a good thing, by the way. I think it can be taken to the extreme, and I think that it can be a problem in that regard. But, you know, when you put together that employees are better informed, more mobile, better protected, And let me give you a fourth one, and more focused.
Yeah.
They know what they want.
Yeah,
they're
that's
willing
right.
to commit to it, et cetera.
Yeah.
When you put those four things together, leadership changes.
It
You better
absolutely
be a better leader and willing to embrace all of those things if you want to make a difference, if you want to make an impact in the organizations that you represent.
Well, it's funny, as you talked about the focus piece, the fourth point that you raised, very much now, individuals, employees, they're looking at companies and figuring, does this company fit for my values, what matters to me? Because if it doesn't, I'll go somewhere else that does. And that's a real change.
That's a huge change. It's not just about the paycheck. It's not just about, the title or whatever. It's about making a difference and having a value set that can be matched up. The business I'm working with, the business that I'm willing to do. I made a promise. I'll be honest with you. I made a promise to myself 33 plus years ago when I started this business that I would not work for a client or for an organization or an individual that I did not like or respect or trust.
Yep.
The reason for that was I had worked in organizations where there were individuals I did not like, respect, or trust.
You know how it feels.
Why would we do that?
Right.
They're not going to get the best of us,
right?
If we don't. So I think I'm excited, quite frankly, about the young generation, the newer generation. I'm not trying to age myself. I think it's just a different stage that I'm in. But I'm excited about it. That I'm working with my daughter-in-law in the business, and she's a millennial, and that's just brought a whole level of energy to the process.
And I was going to touch on that because you have these different generations now, and we've seen this last a while, all in the workplace together, and they all have different values and different skill sets and different interests, and mashing those together. And I was actually going to talk about the fact that you and Allison, who is a past guest on the podcast, that's a shameless plug there for me, but she, you and her work so close together, and the work that you do is dynamic.
Well, since you're into shameless plugs, let me give one as well.
Sure.
We have just started, she and I have just started a Facebook Live program called The Man and the Millennial. And we do it every other Friday. It's on my Facebook Live, Phil Van Hooser, or on my YouTube channel. But the exciting part is that I can come and bring years of experience.
Yes.
She can bring her passion.
Yes.
She can bring her perspective. We can put it in there and as you said, mash it up and see what comes out the other side. And frankly, what comes out the other side 99 times out of 100 is a better result. Yeah. I know more and am better prepared to deal with the challenges that younger employees are facing. She, on the other hand, is able to come out and able to see a perspective that's broader than her own based on years of experience and maturity. How can that be bad? Yeah. How can, as long as we're talking to one another, as long as we're interacting, how can that be bad?
And you're very, again, interacting, talking, communicating, hearing one another, which I think is a good segue into your book, Be Heard. I wonder if you should talk about that, because I think, I think it's very, very relevant to what we're talking about here, especially from the aspect of I'm hearing you, Phil, and you're hearing me.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm going to hold up a copy.
There we go.
Look how green that is. Isn't that, I mean, that's almost as green as I am for everything,
Nice shiny cover. I love it.
The book is a book that should have been written 25 years ago when I first started training on the topic. But it wasn't. And the pandemic gave me some time to sit down and actually write out the process. But there's a couple things that are really important about communication. We all know this. Communication is the key to any leader-follower relationship. I don't care how smart either of the two parties might be, how dedicated, how committed. If they're not able to communicate with one another, we're going to have a breakdown.
Yes.
The second part of it is that connection is the key to communication. Yeah. Again, I hear people say, well, I'm not a very articulate, or I don't like to speak in public, or I'm not the best listener. And all of those things are important. They should be worked on to be improved, but they're not the key to communication. Connection is the key to communication. If you like me, if I like you, if we've connected, you'll forgive the fact that I'm not articulate, or I'm not listening all the time, because we're connected.
That's right.
So this book, Be Heard, is about situations that I have seen over the years where someone tries to sell an idea to someone at a higher level in the organization, a decision maker, a superior, a boss, a board of directors, whatever it may be. Now, here's the problem. They're not connected. And the reason they're not connected is because each one is too focused on their own circumstance or situation. For example, most people, I have discovered, and I go into great depth and detail on this in the book, try to sell their ideas based on passion and emotion.
Okay.
They get so worked up, they care about it so deeply that they think that they can, by way of their own force of personality, I can cause Audley to feel the same way about it that I feel about it.
Which isn't a bad strategy, right? Because we know we connect to passion and we get excited, and it's a matter of getting you excited, right?
It's not a bad strategy if we understand the other person really, really well.
Gotcha.
Because the other person, if he or she is in a decision-making position, has the responsibility that has been entrusted to them to make a decision not for you, but for everyone, for the shareholders, for all the stakeholders, etc. Now, here's what I discovered. And I discovered it because I was one of those young, passionate, emotional guys years ago. So had lots of ideas and wanted to sell them to my bosses, and I got rejected a lot. And finally, I had to sit back and go, they're not bad people. They are coming at this whole process differently than I am. Whereas I'm trying to sell on passion and emotion. They are only buying on logic and rationale. And that was the breakthrough for me. When I realized that I can sell to them my ideas, my perspectives, my initiatives, but to do so, I must do it on logic and rationale, not passion and emotion. Then all of a sudden, 5 questions that every manager needs to have answered before he or she can give us what we want or for us to move forward. If I know those 5 questions, I should be able to develop answers to those 5 questions. That's what the book is all about.
Got you. I love the explanation around the passion and energy and excitement. I know for me that's always been a big one, and I think I sell everything on that, right? Because there's reason to be passionate, excited about it, and the whole idea, and that's why sort of I connected to that and go, well, hey, it's not all bad, but to your point, I hear it loud and clear because that connection piece is needed.
People love to be around passionate and emotional people because it's just there's an energy there. I mean, it is true with you. I enjoy being with you for exactly that reason. But if we remember that decision makers cannot fall victim to just being swept along, that they have a very definitive purpose, then all of a sudden the logic and rationale make perfect sense in terms of what we do. Now, here's where the real fun begins. When you're passionate and emotional about realizing the logic and the rationale behind the initiative, that's when all the stars are aligned, and that's when good things begin to happen.
That's a great combination. And again, when you look at what leaders are accountable for and what they're responsible for, there's a lot, like you said, the shareholders, that everyone's looking to them to make decisions that are aligned with the best interest of the organization. And quite honestly, I think if you're making a decision on this abstract emotion, energy kind of thing, people kind of question your abilities, wouldn't they?
Well, they think that it's all sizzle and no steak. You know, it's like, oh, he talks a good game, but show me the numbers. You know, what was that old Tom Cruise movie? Show me the money. Show me the money. Well, you know, managers have got to really think in terms of that. That may sound a little bit crass, and I don't mean it that way, but they're measured on performance. Performance is often identified or determined by way of bottom line impact. So it only makes sense that books like mine would better prepare people to know what their measurements that they themselves are going to be evaluated against. And hopefully this book will be valuable in that regard.
Got it. I want to go back and dive a little bit, Phil, into the power of connection, because that clearly is a starting point to, for everything else to fall, all the dominoes to fall into place, so to speak. Why do you think that's oftentimes overlooked as a starting point or an area to ensure that there's, okay, look, let's connect first. Let me understand them. Make them understand me, and then we can move from there. Why do you think that's kind of overlooked sometimes?
if I could oversimplify, admittedly, oversimplify, I'm going to put it all in one word.
Okay.
Selfishness. Selfishness. We are too selfish. We think more about ourselves than we do about the other. Now, the other could be our spouse, our children, our friends, our neighbors, our employees, our customers. But if we're thinking too much about ourselves and not enough about the other, then that's selfish, or that's narcissistic, or call it whatever you will. But I believe that if we can get past that and realize that there is a lot that I can learn from Audley, there's a lot that I can learn from or benefit from by knowing and spending time and caring about others, then all of a sudden the connection is easy to make.
Right.
Because it's not about manipulation. It's not about taking advantage of someone.
What's in it for me?
It's about true concern and connection.
Right.
And that's where really good things happen. You and I have been around long enough that we know that there are some people that we have to interact with. They're forced upon us because of the situation we find ourselves in personally or professionally or whatever. Yeah. But we also look for every opportunity to get out of that or to move away from it. But there are other people that we feel connected with that we can't wait to spend time in conversation or spend time in terms of activity with. And those are just the blessings. And I believe the best communicators are the ones that really invest in getting to know the other person, getting to know what's important to them, caring about them, and then the connections just follow. Right. I don't think it's hard once we get past the selfishness issue, but I think it's almost impossible if we can't get past the selfishness issue. Right.
And again, if you bring it back to our earlier part of the conversation, we were talking about leaders and the changes in the workplace and the nuances and all the things that are affecting leaders today. It is very much, and it's not always saying, I'm consciously being selfish, thinking about me. I may be consumed with the work of the organization as a leader, right? But but that piece around shifting my focus from everyone else to this individual, let's say, for example, that needs to happen, because that's what strengthens the connection with the leaders and the individuals that are following them.
Well, and I think we're all practical enough, at least as adults, that if we see our boss or the person in charge spending some time with us, but not all the time with us, we see that he or she is sharing their time and building those connections with others, then all of a sudden that's where the team activity is. We realize if you're an old athlete and still involved actively in sports, et cetera, if the coach only focuses on one of the players, if it's the superstar, then that sends the bad message to the quote unquote average or mediocre players, role players we'll call them. If he only focuses on the role players, then the superstar feels like he is not able to grow and develop. The good coach is the one that understands I have got to meet each player where they are, establish that connection with them so that they trust that I have the best interest in leading all of them, the entire team, toward that established goal, the championship or the league championship or whatever it may be. It's only then that we can have the successes by way of connection, communication, and of course the team activity that is greater than any one of us can realize individually.
For sure. I love the point about meeting people where they are, because I think that's, again, we talk about things that are overlooked. I wonder if you could expand on that, Phil, a bit, because I think that again, we're going back to connection and why that's so significant. The whole idea of I'm here and you're coming to me kind of thing.
Well, that meeting people where they are, there's lots and lots of applications, but I got to be honest with you. I'm a grandfather now. I have got 9 grandbabies. Count them, 9 grandbabies. And awesome. I want you to know I've got the best grandfather name in the world.
Oh yeah? What's that?
The Man. The Man. They all call me the Man. And I mean, that's their name. Now, the older ones have kind of abbreviated it to Man. Hey, man, not the man. But one of the things I'm discovering about these children, and by the way, the grandchildren go from 9 down to 1 in a stair-step formation.
Amazing.
One thing I've learned is that for the 9-year-old to care about me, I've got to connect with them when they're a 1-year-old. I can't wait till they get to the age where I think they're fun. I'll be honest with you. I love babies, but come on. I can only goo and ga for so long.
Yeah.
But I need to goo and ga so that child knows who I am, so that we can talk later and play and even travel much later still. I'm going to give you a quick example. And this is, I was talking to someone about this last night.
Okay.
Allison's youngest, my daughter-in-law that we mentioned a few minutes ago, Allison's youngest turned 1 year old last week. Okay. That means she was born in the midst of the pandemic.
Yes.
Because Allison and Joe my son Joe and Allison are responsible parents. They did the pandemic distancing and keep that baby safe and their family safe, and we respected that. So it was not until that baby was over 4 months old that I was actually able to hold her in my arms. Now, this is the gospel truth. Of all the other 8 grandchildren, I mean, they love me from that quick. I mean, we would play and I would get in the floor with them, and that relationship has continued. Yesterday was the first time that 1 year old ever reached to come to me. Yesterday. Wow. Because why? Well, you could say, well, Phil, you treated them differently. I didn't. I tried to treat her exactly the same way as the other 8. You could say, well, her personality is different. Okay, I'll give you that. There are different personalities.
Sure.
But I think the big key is we didn't have that bonding experience in the first 4 months, and it's taken her that long to, using your words, trust, respect, come to me. Yes. In other words, the connection was harder for her. And I think this is an important lesson because there are individuals out there, leaders now that I'm talking about, forget grandbabies and grandfathers.
Yep.
There are some followers that are harder to connect with. It takes longer. It takes more effort. And sometimes it's just not the same as with other employees. And for the poor communicators, the poor leaders, they just wash their hands up and go, "Oh, you can't get to know Audley. He just, and we write them off." When in fact we should be working harder, not quitting, on building that connection, building that relationship, because every person is important. And as you said, meeting them where they are is critical to the ongoing relationship that will develop as a result, be it good, or be it bad.
Absolutely. It really is, Phil. First of all, I love the story of the grandkids. I think that's a really good illustration because it's true. You talk about when you start building the connections, and oftentimes, and it's true, very true with children, or even adults, you think back to moments and you think back to your childhood and things that you remember about individuals, right? You remember those moments of love and interaction and excitement and the feelings that they generated. So it's not that much different with adults and children, right? It's the same.
But the sad part is a child will also remember distance and coldness and all the rest. And that too is not much different with adults and children. That's why we've got to be very intentional. I talk a lot in my leadership programs about being an intentional leader, knowing what you're doing and doing it regularly, consistently, on purpose, for the goal, the objective that you have set forth. And I think too many people are just lackadaisical and not as focused as they need to be. And as a result, the results they experience are not what they had hoped for.
That is all very true, very true. And the intentionality, and that's why I think your book is very fitting, because you're intentionally communicating to be heard, because we all communicate. We want to be heard. No one communicates to be ignored. We want to be heard. And this is what you're doing through the book.
Well, and that's what you're doing by way of this podcast, for example. You say we need to be audacious, we need to be bold, we need to be focused. And so putting it out there, saying we need to be heard, then we say, well, now we've got to do that. To say we need to be audacious, you go, well, now we have to do that. And then the next question is, how? And once we find the how, the ability or the willingness to do it is not difficult. It's a lot of people simply don't know how. Right. You're trying to help them with this podcast. I'm trying to help them with the book and other work that I do. I think good things can follow if people just trust us.
It absolutely does. And I think when you look at where we are in this day and age, Phil, It's definitely needed. The lack of connection is there. You've got these two sides. One that use the vaccine. Some are vaccinated, some aren't. They've got opinions on who this person's better than the other side. There's that lack of understanding of what's important to you or why you feel the way you do, and those questions aren't being asked. So when we talk about things that are impacting our connectedness, that's a perfect example.
We talked, I wrote a book. This is not my first book. This, in fact, is my sixth book. And I wrote a book several years ago entitled We Need to Talk. And then the subtitle, Building Trust When Communicating Gets Critical. And in it, I identify 6 things that are necessary for face-to-face, nose-to-nose. And I don't mean this in a confrontational way, but face-to-face interactive communication conversation.
Yes.
The first of those 6 points is, and I think it lays the groundwork for all that follow, is talk with people. Unfortunately, at this day and time, we see people talking at people,
yes.
about people, down to people, behind people, but they're not talking with people.
Yeah.
If we can just get to where we can talk with one another, I don't have to agree with everything that you say. You don't have to agree with everything that I say. But I'll bet you $1 to a donut that you and I have far more in common than we have that separates us in terms of what we would talk about. And therefore, there's more opportunity for us to grow a relationship, for us to work in the same vein or toward the same goal. And unfortunately, here's the sad truth. If people don't want that to happen, it won't.
Right.
I believe it can happen with anybody, but the first and most important point is they must want to talk with someone.
Yes.
And frankly, you do. I mean, you're constantly looking for new audience members. You're looking for new people to include in your podcast. I, on the other hand, am the same way. I'm looking for new people to talk with that I can learn from, that I can share with. I'm not saying you and I are better than the average person, but I do believe that's a lesson that we've learned that has benefited us.
Yeah.
And I believe that same lesson can benefit others if it were to be embraced.
Yeah. Well, Phil, it's an opportunity for growth. As you throughout your where you are in your work, I highly doubt it's the exact same place. And when you started, you've grown through that process. Again, we reference working alongside Allison. Through that opportunity, there's growth in that as well, and there's development. So I think when we get caught into talking to people, right, not listening, not getting an opportunity to gain perspectives, gain understandings, I'm talking to you just to convince you that you're wrong, then we're showing the opportunity for growth. Well, and the reality of it is too, shutting off opportunities for growth means that we don't realize our full potential. And how sad if on the last day of our life, whenever that might be, someone came and said, isn't it sad that Phil could have done so much more? Or isn't it sad that Audley could have done so much more? I don't want that to be said of me. I want to use up everything I've got. I want to take advantage of every opportunity. I want to be as bold and audacious as I can possibly be without being offensive and without being, a bore to be around. Sure. But I want to maximize the opportunity, and that's why I always look forward to talking to people like you who sort of see the world through the same lens. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's awesome. I really, first off, Phil, I appreciate connecting with you again and sitting down and having this chat. You're ultra inspiring, just in terms of you take a really black and white approach to things and make it easy to understand. And again, when you start talking about the communication, that's what you want. You want people to understand the messages that you're delivering. Again, I can't say enough how thrilled I am to watch you and Allison work together. I think it's a dynamic combination, and it's great stuff. I have had an opportunity to check out your Facebook Live chats there, and the man and the millennial. That's right. That's right. Yeah. You take live questions, right? People can send you a question. You guys answer them on the spot there. And I think that's, again, we start to talk about the new ways of doing things, because when you started leadership, 30 years ago, those tools weren't available to you as they are now, but you've opened up and you allowed yourself to experiment and try. And I think that's a great part of what you do.
And how can you not be excited if you're in the field of communication?
Yeah.
And who isn't today? How can you not be excited about living at a time when you can communicate instantly with people around the world? They can see, they can hear you. You can learn from them by seeing and hearing them.
Yeah.
If we truly have ideas, we can get it out there very quickly.
Yeah.
People can make their determination if it's something for them or not.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is, it's a wonderful and exciting time to live, I think.
Yeah, it is. I'm with you on that one, Phil. I'm with you on that one. Let's hold up your book one more time so we can get the big green shine. Be heard. What's the subtitle there?
Earning the right to be heard, and then subtitles: sell your ideas, build your influence, and grow your opportunities. All of it contained in here, a strategy and a recipe for doing just that.
Gotcha. And you referenced there's 5 key questions, right, that are being asked. Can we quickly? I'm curious myself. What are we asking people? What are those questions at? What are we asking?
Remember, I said these are 5 key questions managers must have answers to before they can feel comfortable in approving or moving forward, et cetera. So the 5 questions are these. And they are in sequence, at least the first 2, and the other 3 then follow suit. Number 1, how much will it cost? Number 2, what will be the benefits I can expect? Number 3, how long will it take? Number 4, how difficult will it be to implement? And number 5, what are the consequences of me not doing this? I not only tell you the 5 questions, those are pretty obvious, but being able to answer the questions in a way that decision makers will be able to respond positively, and therefore not only help you get what you want, but secondly, and more importantly, help you earn the right to be heard going forward. That's what I do in the book.
That's awesome. And I love the fact those 5 questions, you can apply those to any sort of decision model that you go through. Absolutely. Professional, personal, like those are all key questions that I'm trying to think people really should be considering, if not all of them, at least some of them for sure.
When you get ready to buy your next house,
that's right,
this book will help you. When you get ready to buy your next car, this book will help you. When you get ready to help your children decide which college or university they're going to go off to, this book will help. Those 5 questions are universal in their scope, and they apply in so many different situations. So I hope you can tell I'm excited about it, but I'm equally excited that you're excited about it.
I was going to say, I hope you can tell I'm excited, but that's probably, it goes without saying, right?
That's where good things happen there.
That it is. Phil, where can our audience go to check out the book or learn more about the work that you do?
Really simple. To find about the work that I do, go to our website, my last name, Van Hooser. I think you have it on the screen, maybe vanhooser.com.
Yeah.
That explain, and you'll find not only my work, but Allison's work there as well. As far as the book is concerned, certainly go and just Phil, P-H-I-L, Phil at vanhooser.com. I'll send all kind of information on it. The book will be officially released on November the 16th. But we have a page on our website that people can learn more about it, et cetera. But again, type in Phil Van Hooser, type in Be Heard. You should be able to find the book.
Amazing. Phil, this has been so great. I'm glad we sat down and chatted today, had a lot of fun. I think you're onto something extremely important. Again, from that connection, we talked all about the importance of connection. That is a root, that is a starting point. And without that, everything else is just that much more difficult. So thank you.
Well, you're a wonderful, you're a gentleman and a scholar. You're giving me this opportunity to be a part of this discussion some 10 years after our first meeting and conversation. So I guess I should set my clock for 10 years from now when we're going to talk again, right?
Well, hey, listen.
Let's hope it's not 10 years.
Well, it won't be, because I know. I mean, the woman at the bank worked 62 years. So you've got what, 29, 20. 30 to go.
Yeah, we got a ways to go there.
We'll have a few more conversations, I'm sure. Thanks, Phil. Take care.
Take care of yourself, and then good luck to you, my friend.
Back we are here on the podcast, and my appreciation thanks goes out to Phil for joining me and sharing some wonderful insights. In fact, they were great insights. And, Phil is absolutely right. Connection is the key to communication. And I, again, appreciate you, Phil, for being here and sending that message and spreading it. And again, congratulations on the book, Earning the Right to Be Heard. It's a great read, and I'm sure listeners will really appreciate it. Phil left us with so much to think about, but if there's just one thing that I take away from our conversation, it would be this. A key aspect to effective communication is tied into our ability to connect with one another on a deep, authentic level. It's for this reason why understanding others and being understood are essential to building human connection. Being more understanding of one another increases our willingness to accept views, beliefs, and behaviors that are different from our own with a lot less judgment. And doing so eliminates the divide that keeps us separated. The closer we are to one another, the more effective our communication can be. And that's truly how we earn the right to be heard. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com, and all you've got to do is enter in your email address, and you will immediately be alerted every time there is new content that comes out. So I encourage you to do so. We've reached the end of another episode of the Audacious Living Podcast, and I always have to show my thanks and appreciation to our awesome listeners and supporters and all those lovers of Audacious out there. Thank you for your ongoing support. I can't express enough appreciation for all you've done to keep this thing going. So again, thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.